Why is it that if people are capable of healing themselves with or without the help of psychotherapy, so many fail in this process while few succeed? Even though the path of spiritual growth is challenging, it is available to everyone. However, why do so few choose to follow it? This question resonates with Christ's reflection when he said, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Regardless of our current situation or the difficulties we face, we all possess the potential to transform ourselves, overcome obstacles, and seek full mental health. Nevertheless, most of us do not exercise that ability. Instead, we allow our problems to go unresolved. We settle for a mediocrity that keeps us below our true potential and exposes us to the risk of mental disorders. But why has this stagnation become so common? In this video, based on the ideas of psychiatrist Scott Peck, we will explore this issue and discover how we can be part of the select group that chooses the path of personal growth, which Peck calls the road less traveled. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. Most people, however, do not fully grasp this truth. Instead, they complain incessantly, either loudly or silently, about the magnitude of their problems, burdens, and difficulties, as if life were naturally easy, as if it should be simple. Life is, in fact, a series of problems. We can choose to lament them or to solve them. One of the greatest signs of wisdom is accepting that life is full of challenges, that problems are inevitable, and that suffering is part of our existence. A profound sign of wisdom is understanding that by facing our problems, we will inevitably suffer. However, this suffering has a purpose and leads to personal growth. Unfortunately, many of us lack this perception. Instead, we cling to the false hope that by achieving certain goals, such as making money, finding the ideal partner, or landing our dream job, life will become easy. Often, we try to escape our problems through various forms of avoidance. We project blame onto others or our circumstances, and working to resolve them, procrastinate in hopes that problems will dissolve on their own, deny the existence of our challenges, or resort to distractions like compulsive technology use, alcohol, or drugs, seeking to numb the suffering and anguish that accompany our dilemmas. As Scott Peck noted, some of us go to incredible lengths to avoid facing our problems, distancing ourselves from what is evidently sensible and good, hoping to find a quick fix. We construct elaborate fantasies to live in, often far removed from reality. Instead of confronting problems head-on, we look for ways to circumvent them, preferring to escape rather than endure the necessary suffering to overcome them. This attempt to avoid suffering is destined to fail. Instead of resolving problems, we end up lost in illusions and exacerbating our difficulties. This constant flight exposes us to meaningless suffering, which, according to Peck, is the root of many mental illnesses. Carl Jung succinctly captured this idea. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. The problem is that this substitute, instead of alleviating, becomes more painful than the original suffering we try to avoid. Neurosis itself becomes our greatest challenge. Often, in trying to avoid the pain accompanying our problems, we end up building layer upon layer of neurosis. By distancing ourselves from the necessary suffering that arises when facing life's challenges, we also flee from the growth these problems demand. This is why, in cases of chronic mental illness, there is a paralysis of personal development and we become stagnant. That comes with confronting our problems and then actively work to resolve them. To increase our capacity to deal with that suffering, it's essential to understand that it is not an enemy, but one of our greatest teachers. As Benjamin Franklin observed, that which hurts also instructs. Or, as the Greek tragedian Aeschylus wrote millennia ago, wisdom comes through suffering. When we stop fleeing and numbing ourselves against suffering, it reveals where we are failing and forces us to face the true magnitude of our problems, highlighting the need for change. This is why Peck viewed depression as a healthy symptom that only becomes pathological when we try to suppress it and avoid the transformations its presence demands. As he explains, depressive symptoms indicate to the individual that something is wrong and that significant adjustments are needed. Depression is a normal and healthy phenomenon. One of the benefits of enduring suffering instead of avoiding or masking it is that over time we reach a point where we grow tired of suffering and feel deeply motivated to resolve once and for all the problems causing it. Friedrich Nietzsche, using this threshold as a catalyst to overcome his own destructive habits, expressed, "From the bottom of my soul, I am grateful for all my suffering and illnesses, because these experiences opened hundreds of doors through which I could escape from permanent bad habits." If suffering motivates us to face our problems and bad habits, we will have to struggle and suffer to overcome them. But unlike neurotic suffering, which generates paralysis and wasted life, this type of suffering is constructive as it propels us toward personal growth. As Peck observed, it is by facing and resolving problems that we learn. It is in that process that life gains meaning. Problems awaken our courage and wisdom. Indeed, they create them. It is through the pain that problems cause that we grow mentally and spiritually. Legitimate suffering serves as a powerful teacher, driving our personal growth. This is why Peck also noted, "Wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems and the pain they bring." Great historical figures like Buddha and Jesus use the inherent pain of their struggles to reach a high level of consciousness, characterized not only by the ability to endure suffering, but also by the experience of deep joy. A measure, and perhaps the best measure, of a person's greatness is their capacity to endure suffering. Nevertheless, the great are also joyful. This is the paradox. Buddhists often ignore Buddha's suffering, and Christians forget Christ's joy. Buddha and Christ were not different. Christ's suffering and surrendering on the cross and Buddha's joy and surrendering under the Bodhi tree are essentially the same. However, it's not just the tendency to avoid suffering that imprisons us in a life of mediocrity and mental disorder. Laziness also plays a significant role in this process. As psychologist Marie-Louise von Franz observed, when people try to avoid problems, we must first ask whether it's simply laziness. Jung once said, "Laziness is the greatest passion of humanity, greater even than power or sex or anything else." Peck defined laziness as the manifestation of entropy in our lives. In the external world, entropy is the natural tendency of systems to move toward disorder and stagnation. Similarly, in our inner world, laziness acts as this destructive force, leading us to a state of psychic disorder and stagnation. Laziness is so present and widespread that Peck considered it the true original sin. He writes, "For a long time I found the idea of original sin absurd, even offensive. Over time, however, I began to notice the omnipresence of laziness. Original sin really exists. It's in our laziness. It's very real. Some of us may be less lazy than others, but we all have laziness to some degree. No matter how diligent, ambitious, or wise we are, if we look deeply within ourselves, we will always find laziness lurking. It's the force of entropy within us that drags us down and prevents us from evolving spiritually. Many may argue that they are not lazy since they spend long hours working and dedicate their free time to various activities like household chores, moments with friends and family, and even rest. However, as Peck points out, laziness takes forms that go beyond the number of hours we spend working or attending to responsibilities with others. One of the main forms laziness takes is fear. Although many of us say we want to grow, succeed, or even achieve greatness, we often fear the process of personal development more than we desire it. This is due to the enormous amount of effort this growth demands. The connection between fear and laziness is so profound that the mind unconsciously finds creative ways to justify this laziness. A classic example is when we convince ourselves that the desire to relax and enjoy life is not laziness, but a sophisticated form of hedonism. Peck observes that in the initial stages of spiritual growth, people are generally unaware of their own laziness. This happens because the lazy part of the self, like the devil it can be, is cunning and specializes in deceptive disguises. It hides its laziness in rationalizations that the more evolved part of the self does not yet have the strength to see or combat. Friedrich Nietzsche also identified laziness as an entropic psychological force endowed with almost diabolical characteristics and suggested that we must confront it with a light and joyful approach. When we finally see through our excuses and recognize our laziness, we need not be ashamed. Instead, we can laugh at it, accepting that it is an inherent part of the human condition. True happiness does not lie in passive leisure, but arises as a result of conscious effort in pursuit of personal growth and meaningful goals. Although the words of teachers and prophets are available, the path must be traveled on your own. No teacher can take you to the destination, and there are no pre-designed formulas. This might be the end of the video, but to me, it feels like the beginning of a great friendship. I want to thank you for staying with me until the end. It truly means a lot. I hope to see you in the next one, where we'll explore the mysteries of life and human nature together. Until then, take care, and see you next time.